Okay, so to make kombucha, we're going to use some black tea, white sugar, and water. And we will end up with this, our kombucha. We're going to use a 1 litre jar, and it's going to be filled to the top, or thereabouts. We need some space at the top. And of course, we'll need to use a S.C.O.B.Y, which lives in our sweetened tea and makes our kombucha. So let's see how we do that. So we use black tea, which is a loose leaf tea. For 1 litre of kombucha, we're going to need to use 1 teaspoon of tea. And for each litre, use a teaspoon. So we're going to make our tea as you would any cup of tea with some hot water. So we can place our tea in a pot. And remember, I'm doing 1 litre of kombucha. And so I'm going to use I can use 2 if I want to. And I do like to do that. So I use 2 teaspoons of tea. And I'm using not the full litre of hot water, because I wait for the tea to steep, and then I add a little bit more of my water so that it's cool, and I don't have to wait for my tea to cool down before I put it in my kombucha. So once that's cooled down, now I need to add my sugar. So for 1 litre of kombucha, you can have somewhere between 60 and 70 grams of sugar per litre. When that's cooled down, let's add the sugar. Give it a good stir, make it sure it's all dissolved. So now that our tea's dissolved and is cooled down, we're going to add it to our S.C.O.B.Y in our container. Now S.C.O.B.Y needs to live inside the sweet tea for about a week or more. Okay, so we've made the sweet tea, and now we're going to add the sweet tea to the kombucha S.C.O.B.Y, which is in the glass container that we just made. So I've used a small sieve, and I've poured the sweetened tea into the 1 litre vessel with the kombucha inside. So after we've added in the sweetened tea, now I'm going to add a small amount of some of the kombucha mixture from where my S.C.O.B.Y was living. So my S.C.O.B.Y wasn't living in a white container. It was living with some other S.C.O.B.Ys in another jar full of sweetened tea, which I've had for a while, and that just sat on the bench in my kitchen. So when I transferred the S.C.O.B.Y into the new sweetened tea, be sure to also add perhaps about 100 mils or more for that 1 litre jar of kombucha from where the S.C.O.B.Y was living. That inoculates the batch. So now we're going to take a cloth that we can use to cover the top of the jar. So we're not going to seal the jar. Air needs to be able to get into the jar that will be stored perhaps on our kitchen bench for a week or so. I fold it over a few times and make sure that there's no little fruit flies try to get in or anything like that, because the S.C.O.B.Y is attractive to those kinds of bugs. So make sure that you're keeping it out of harm's way, and it's quite happy in there. So once that kombucha's been brewing for about a week or so or more, you can taste it with a straw or whatever you need to. You can take some of the kombucha and pour it into other bottles if you wish, and add some flavors. So I've made some with some herbs from the garden, coffee grounds. This is a ginger one. And I'd leave these bottles for about another week in a warm environment. And each day I'm taking the lids off just to make sure that the fermentation process doesn't build up too much pressure inside the bottles.